Oh, consumers, we should brace ourselves for possible higher electricity prices. Why, you ask? Well, the Gauteng High Court yesterday set aside National Energy Regulator of South Africa, that's NERSA'S decision, awarding Eskom 32 billion rand for 3 financial years, dating back to 2015, 2016 and 17. Eskom had applied for 66.6 billion in regulatory clearing accounts, that's the RCA balances, for the 3 financial years. But NERSA only awarded half the amount, which the court found to be irrational. Meanwhile, it has been revealed that 100 billion rand calculation error by NERSA will most likely see consumers pay increased electricity tariffs. And last month, NERSA approved a 13 billion rand balance of Eskom's RCA for the 2018-2019 financial year to be recovered from customers through tariffs. Now, while Eskom can now recover much needed finances, consumers are once again left with that hefty bill. So to discuss this further, we are joined via Zoom by Eskom's regulation specialist. We've got Hasha Tlotlachemaje joining us here on the program. It's good to have you. Thanks very, very much for being with us on Morning Live.
Thanks for the opportunity to clarify the situation.
All right, good. So let's get some clarification. The court has ruled in favor of Eskom. What will happen after yesterday's decision?
Well, now the decision will get remitted to NERSA, and NERSA would have to basically re-look at its decision in line with the principles that have been provided in the judgment. And therefore, there will be a revision of that decision that NERSA had made and further tariff adjustments at a later stage, not right now. And also, maybe just as an opportunity to take on your opening, send a few lines, we need to keep in mind that Eskom is only asking for its efficient and prudent costs to be recovered. And that is where NERSA did not allow. And if Eskom doesn't get the money or the tariff increases from the consumers, then it would need to depend on the fiscus. And the fiscus actually means it's a taxpayer. So somebody has to pay for the prudent and efficient costs. If it's not the consumer, then it's going to be the taxpayer. And we feel as Eskom is not the correct way to go. And I think this is something that the president and the has always said, that the user must pay for the services that they get. Okay. And I think that is what we're trying to strive towards. Both Eskom and NERSA, is just that the pace seems to be different.
When you say efficient and prudent costs to be recovered, what amount are we looking at? What does Eskom deem to be this amount, efficient and prudent costs?
Well, each time Eskom makes a lengthy applications and it motivates what are its prudent and efficient costs. And it would vary in the sales forecasts are going to be how much of coal would be needed, how much of open cycle gas turbines would be needed, how much of building of power stations and lines, etc. So all of that is done per application. And that is what Eskom applies for, and that is what it would expect. But just a ballpark figure at the moment, Eskom is probably between 25 and 30% short at the moment of what its prudent and efficient costs are, that it is not recovering. And that's not even been applied for. So that, and that's why we are what is called migrating towards cost reflectivity. So we're migrating to covering our prudent and efficient costs. So, and we're not there yet.
In one of the cases, let's talk to the status on the 69 million rand cash injection by Treasury, which NERSA regarded as a tariff subsidy. Talk to us about that.
Yes, the Minister of Finance made that decision and then has conceded that it had misappropriated the 69 billion, by the way, not million, and over the 3-year period when it made its decision. So NERSA has agreed that it had made an incorrect decision in misappropriating that 69 billion. So the case that was held on the 24th of June, also in the High Court, has basically debated or discussed how that can be recovered by Eskom over in a phased manner. So and that's where the judge would have to make a decision on how that is going to happen. So we await time in July.
You know, you mentioned a bit earlier that you didn't want the price and the burden to fall just on the taxpayer, but rather to be shared between the taxpayer and the user. Perhaps you can give us an explanation as to who you believe the user and the taxpayer are, if they are not the same person.
No, definitely they're not the same person. We have many, many more electricity consumers than we have taxpayers, because many people are not employed, and you would use electricity as a company as well as an individual, etc. So that there would be many more consumers that would need to pay for the electricity. But it's also important that when we have to pay for the service, we use it in an efficient manner ourselves, so that we know how much we're spending on a monthly basis, and we don't abuse that service. Because if we don't pay for it ourselves, then it's somebody else that's going to pay. It feels like the government or the consumers are paying for it, and then we don't use it as efficiently as possible. We did find this to be the case. For example, large industry, when the price of electricity was phenomenally low, they did not think about putting efficient machinery, etc., in their industries, because electricity was so cheap. But as the price became more towards what it really costs to produce that electricity, they became more efficient in the way that they use it. So this is the kind of consumer behavior that needs to be driven, because it is an important commodity that needs to be managed properly. And one of the ways is to be able to pay for the service that one is getting.
Yeah. Which of course is a big challenge for Eskom, because there are still many municipalities and many areas that are not paying for their electricity. And this is a big sticking point. I mean, in terms of the amount of money that is owed to Eskom, what are we still looking at with regard to non-payment of electricity?
Yes, I mean, that is a big challenge, and there are many initiatives underway. You know, there are initiatives with government, with the various departments in government, with SALGA, with COGTA, etc., as well as Eskom has to resort to further court action as well in this regard. So, you know, all of that is underway. It is understood that it is a challenge. It's a challenge in the country. It's not only specific to Eskom, but there are inroads being made. And you're absolutely right, there needs to be more progress in that area. But also just to keep in mind, if the money that's owed to Eskom by municipality people, it will give a one-off adjustment. What Eskom is looking for in its tariff increase is to have a permanent increase that will basically allow the price to increase and not to continue to depend on further equity injections, etc. So there is a difference in the times that when one refers to these two concepts.
All right, let's get back to the issue at hand with NERSA. Let's talk about NERSA's tariff increase determinations that Eskom doesn't agree with. What are those?
Okay, let's step back. Basically, every single tariff and revenue decision that NERSA has made from December 2017 has been reviewed in the High Court by the Eskom board. So that is the challenge that we are dealing with. The first one was for the 2018-2019 financial year, where there was a 5.23%. The judge found that to be an irrational, unlawful, etc., unprocedural kind of a decision. And in that instance, there is what is called a regulatory clearing account, which is a reconciliation account after the actuals are determined. And the judge has determined that after the regulatory clearing account, Eskom is entitled to make a supplementary application. So that process is still underway, and consideration is being given to that. Then it is the one that you referred to previously, which are the regular clearing account, RCAs, for the 2015, 16 and 17 financial years. And that's where the judgment was handed down yesterday. And so in that instance, that goes back to NERSA to reconsider. And once it makes a balanced decision, so it would, however billion rands, say 20 billion rands, and then NERSA will make a subsequent decision how this money can be recovered in the subsequent financial years. Just to note that the only first adjustment that can be made from April 2021. Nothing prior to that can be made because of the nature of the cycles of the revenue or the tariff increase.
Yeah.
Then we come to
continue.
the 69 billion case where we expect an outcome in July, and then we would get guidance from whatever the judgment is on where that would go as to, again, the merits have been agreed upon. It is just the recovery of that 69 billion. Also, it would be in a phased manner over a few years that a decision would need to be made by NERSA. Then subsequent to that, there has been another application made by the Eskom board, and this is for the 2018 financial year, which is similar to the previous three, where NERSA made the same errors and inaccurate interpretation of its methodology. So that one is still in the process, in the initial process. NERSA has opposed that. So those are the four cases that are underway. Yeah,
quite incredible actually to see so much happening right now. I'll quiz you a bit more on that, but I just want to finish the conversation with regard to NERSA. You are making a supplementary application to NERSA to award you the shortfall. How much are you hoping to actually get back through this?
Well, we have to properly interpret what the judgment says and what the RCA decisions have said, and then we would look at what would have been a lawful decision when the original decision was made. And so that process is still underway, where we are getting approval from our relevant governance structures.
Okay.
But we have until 18th of July to submit that, so we will have to be submitting that soon once there is approval got on that.
All right. Now, this one really got, I think, a lot of people, this 100 billion rand mistake, which we said in the introduction, was basically saying that NERSA calculated a 100 billion rand mistake that now consumers have to probably pay for due to this miscalculation through increased tariffs. How do you miscalculate 100 billion rand?
Yeah, maybe just to slightly give a different nuance to that is that and of that 100 billion, 69 billion is the misappropriation of the equity injection. So that was a decision that was made. It wasn't like an arithmetic mistake. It was just an incorrect interpretation of their methodology. And that contributes to billion. A further about 26 billion are referred to the 3 years of the RCAs, and a further about 13 to 14 billion for the fifth year's RCA of the MYPT3 period. So that's how we get 100 billion. So it's some of them are real arithmetic mistakes, but a lot of them are the incorrect interpretation of the methodology where previous precedents were not followed. So they would do something in 1 year. Just remember, in 2015, Eskom coincidentally also got an equity injection of 23 billion. And NERSA did not do anything as it has done now, as it's done now. So that was, and it's from an accounting point of view and from a methodology, a NERSA methodology point of view, it has been accepted by NERSA that it had made a mistake, or it did that incorrectly.
All right, Hasha, I want to bring this back down to earth, because I think we may have gone right over most of our viewers' heads with all of these numbers, because even my mind is being boggled right now. It really is. There is so much around this, but I want to bring this down to the basics now, because what it appears to me and what it all looks like is that Eskom is working hard at using the law now to recover as much money from the public as possible during a time where the public has no money, where we are under huge constraints right now. It also gives a sense that consumers constantly have to pay for Eskom's mistakes time and time again. Is this the right way of reading into it? I suppose your answer is going to be no, but most of the consumers are going to feel this is.
No. Look, first of all, we are sensitive to the needs of the consumers. And therefore, Eskom has allowed its tariff to increase in a phased manner. And that's where the difference lies, is the phasing is very different. And NERSA has, by making these poor decisions, actually made it more difficult for the consumer, because when there was, for example, a 5.23% increase, if we had a slightly higher increase in that year, we would not be looking at such a steep mountain in front of us. So those poor decisions have led to further pressure on consumers. But I need to warn that we are sensitive to what the consumers, these are our customers that we are talking about. And so we are continuing to increase the prices in a phased manner. But obviously it is a little bit more, for example, than CPI would be. It would be a little bit more. But once we get over that, there will be a stage where it would plateau. But we are still migrating to that stage where we can plateau after that. So, rest assured, the quicker we can get over the difficult stages, the quicker we can reach the plateau stage. Yeah. So there is a light at the pun on the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. But
I have to giggle at that one. I have to giggle at that one because there's not a lot of light going around at the moment, and we're paying for all of this. And I mean, I know that there's a new change. It's not even called load shedding. It's called, wait, hang on. Let me just open it up. It's called not load shedding, load sharing. This is a new word that Eskom has come up with. So we're not always getting this electricity that we're paying more and more and more. And in the midst of all of this, the energy regulator last month basically saying that certain governance failures occurred in Eskom. And that's why they owed you, or allowed you rather, to recover that 13 billion rand and not the full amount. Now, how does Eskom explain those governance failures?
Yes, let's just clarify that, as that Eskom and NERSA have reached an agreement that whenever there are any refund of any funds related to any governance failures, that will be made for the benefit of the consumer through subsequent regulatory clearing accounts. And Eskom has already done that in the 1 billion that it recovered from McKinsey. So that has already been subtracted from what is being claimed in an RCA. So there is that commitment, and we must understand that these are long legal processes themselves to be able to recover. So therefore, we always make a particular emphasis that there is a prudent and efficient cost that Eskom incurs, and there might be some governance failures that resulted in additional costs. So we do separate out the two. And we have to keep in mind that our average price of electricity is one of the lowest in the world, where we are not recovering our efficient costs. In Africa, as well as in the world, we are not there yet. And the point is, and our large is really due to NERSA not making proper decisions as well. If they were, in the last 8 years or so, better decisions made, we would not have had such a large debt burden that we have to be able to service as well. So it is a very complex that needs to be addressed. And we are trying, and we are absolutely sensitive to all kinds of customers, and we try our best to make sure that vulnerable customers are taken care of, and we assist in dealing with the relevant government departments to come up with ideas on how to address these issues. But we cannot mix up the concept of the average price of electricity with what particular vulnerable sectors need as well.
All right. Just, Hasha, our final question to you, just again, giving this to the consumer bluntly. This year's tariff increase was at 8.76%, if I'm correct. But, what are consumers going to be looking at next year when NERSA adds this shortfall?
Yeah, and it's all dependent on NERSA, and that's what NERSA's mandate is to balance the impact on the consumers with the sustainability on Eskom. And if you read some of the articles recently, it is some of the bigger customers that NERSA has been more one-sided in this and not taking care of the sustainability of Eskom. So I think that is something that NERSA would be looking at now more correctly, but it would be a NERSA decision. So we await that.
Well, and so do we. Hasha, thanks very, very much for talking to us here on the program. Hasha Tlotlale Maje, who is Eskom's regulation specialist, talking to us about the state power company's court ruling, which places the debt-riddled utility in a better position now to recover much-needed finances from you and I, unfortunately. All right, that leads us up to 8 o'clock.